Conservative Leadership Conference in Reno, Nevada, and we're talking to former Congressman Bob Barr of Georgia. The reason we're talking to him is because back in June he wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal entitled, "Don't Ask, Who Cares?" Good evening, Mr. Barr. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing just fine, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Enjoyed your speech earlier today.
Thanks.
Great. Now, you used to be a Republican when you were in Congress and represented the state of Georgia, and now you're a member of the Libertarian National Committee. Could you tell us very briefly what prompted that change from Republican to Libertarian?
A lot of things. On the one hand, we've seen over the last several years the tremendous growth of the Republican Party into a party of big government. Just slightly less big government than the Democrat Party, but a party of big government nonetheless.
Right.
But I think probably more than anything else that convinced me that I would no longer be serving the cause of freedom by remaining a member of the Republican Party was the way the Republican Party under this administration in particular has denigrated our civil liberties in this country, including our right to privacy. When you have a president who happens to be of the Republican Party deliberately violating the law against electronically surveilling American citizens in our own country, and not only saying, I did this, but I'm proud I did it, and I'm going to continue to do it. To me, that drove home the conclusion that the Republican Party was no longer the party of civil liberties, it was no longer the party of individual freedom, and it was not going to change. So I decided to look for and find, as I did in the Libertarian Party, a party that truly did care about freedom and worked for freedom.
Excellent, excellent. Our organization, Integrity and Service, we have three core values, and those are freedom, integrity, and responsibility. And integrity, from the title of our organization, is the core value, is the most important of them all. What does integrity mean to you, sir?
Well, integrity at its core simply means being truthful, not just with yourself, but others, and living up to the ideals that you set, and not saying one thing to people and then going back on it or finding a reason to go back on it. It's one of the core values, I think, that you see running throughout the philosophy of governance of our country laid out by our founding fathers. There were several things to them also that I think were important ingredients if our country was to be successful in using the freedom that they bequeathed to us. Understanding, involvement in education was certainly one, but integrity, the integrity of those in public office to say the truth and practice the truth, as well as the integrity of the voting public, were very important to the success of this experiment.
And the integrity of military leaders with their soldiers would also be as important in accomplishing their mission.
Very, very good point. And one thing that has distressed me a great deal over the years, particularly in recent years, is the lack of integrity on the part of our military leaders in a number of different areas. And I think this is the result of the emphasis and the value that many of our military leaders place on promotion as being more important than speaking the truth and telling the truth and practicing the truth. Putting their own careers ahead of the careers and the livelihood and the well-being of those under their command, and really believing that they have a superior duty to the president rather than the Constitution. I can't tell you the number of times when I served in the Congress that our military leaders would come up there and say one thing publicly before the Congress, and then tell us privately something very different.
Right. Well, that's one of the things that I remember when I took the oath of enlistment, is to support and defend the Constitution above all else. Some interesting things here in your op-ed that you wrote for the Wall Street Journal. One thing that you said is equal treatment of gay and lesbian service members is about as conservative a position as one cares to articulate. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, at the core of the conservative philosophy of governance is respect for the individual and respect for the rule of law. And that means you have the rule of law, and you don't have the rule of law that applies to this group but not to that group. That's why the Republican Party, for example, which used to be conservative but no longer is, for many, many decades was really known as the party of civil liberties and civil rights. Yet nowadays it is not. And the lack of integrity and the lack of consistency in applying the laws of our country to individuals, regardless of some arbitrary criteria, such as sexual orientation, is really one of the reasons why I think a lot of Americans are becoming more and more dissatisfied with the traditional political parties.
Excellent, excellent. What do you think we need to do? Because currently there's already a bill in Congress. It's already at the Armed Services Committee, and basically they're sitting on it. They're not doing anything about it. It's called the Military Readiness Enhancement Act. And the essence of that bill would simply do away with Don't Ask, Don't Tell. What would you recommend to someone like myself who is actively trying to lobby Congress to pass that legislation? What would you recommend that I do and that others do to lobby Congress successfully?
First of all, probably is don't get discouraged. And I know that's hard to do. It's hard for me to do in fighting for our civil liberties. But I think it's very important not to get discouraged, never give up. There are any number of examples. We've talked at some of them here at this Conservative Leadership Conference, myself and others. If one is right, as you are, as I hope I am in many of the issues that I espouse and things that I fight for, then we should never, ever, ever give up fighting for those. And members of Congress and United States senators will resist the effort as long as they can to change the status quo.
True.
And what we as advocates for changing the status quo have to do is go back to them over and over and over again, always politely, never in a confrontational way, but to go back in every form that we can, whether it's letter writing, opinion piece writing, calling into talk shows, going to town hall meetings that members and senators have, raising these issues over and over and over again, working with groups in an organized way to move those issues to the forefront so that at some point in the hopefully not too distant future, we've taken that concern, that issue, that problem that folks in the Congress now want to just forget about and ignore, and raise it to the level where they can't ignore it. That's when you start to really make progress.
Excellent, excellent. One final question. What would you say to gay, lesbian, bisexual service members who are actually in the military now? Is there any advice or anything that you'd like to say to them?
Well, first of all, to thank them for their service to the country. It's not always an easy thing to do, regardless of one's sexual preference, but it's particularly hard fighting that inbred animosity that we know exists among a lot of people and institutionally. I would urge them to continue serving their country, not to get discouraged, the same as those of us working in the civilian sector, and to remember ultimately that oath of office that they take, that you took, that all officers and enlisted personnel take, and if it ever reaches the point where their personal beliefs and their understanding of our Constitution and our laws conflicts with what's going on in the military, then I think they have an obligation to leave and continue to fight that battle elsewhere in the civilian sector, as I know you and many of your colleagues are doing, through petition drives and pushing legislation, working through the Libertarian Party and other political organizations.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you for speaking to us today.
My pleasure. Thanks.